This is the Down to South London podcast, where experienced investor Jeroen Hoppe talks to real investors south of the river. Lots of people say that you can't make good investments in London. Jeroen will talk to real people who are. Okay, so welcome to Down to South London. This is the home recorded social distancing version of the podcast because, hey, we're not, we can't actually see each other. So like the rest of the world, we're using Zoom today to record everything. Technical hitches have come and gone, and we're here now. So welcome, Areeb, to the show. Why don't you
Thank you so much for having me.
Background about who you are, what you do, and tell us about South London.
Right. So I've been developing property for the last sort of 18 years. And it's pretty much been a family thing. So second generation, my dad was into a couple of buy-to-lets. And then from there, I sort of took passion for it and just grew it further into what it is today.
And you also run an estate agency, right?
Yeah, I run an estate agency as well. So that came about because I wasn't really happy with the service I was receiving with most agents. And I decided to I had enough of my own portfolio to run my own agency, as well as we took on from others, friends and family and so forth, and just grew that business from there. So we're mostly focused on lettings and management. I also run a construction company as well. So that gives me an advantage in terms of when I'm developing my own projects. So I do develop for others as well. So it just gives me a bit of an advantage on that edge as well. So that's a bit of a USP.
That's a great diversification of revenue streams. So you've got, you've got your own portfolio. You build yourself, you build for others, and you manage in-house as well. So that's really powerful. Now, I put out a video recently about the sort of different demands and how the different tenants segments will respond to this whole tenant lockdown. And I was really keen to hear people's thoughts on that from different points of view. So you're in essence a build to renter. So you have your own property portfolio, which you literally built from scratch. Firstly, let's talk about the initial shockwave, right? So the initial shockwave, the corona lockdown is here. How is that affecting your tenant demographic in terms of their employment and so forth?
I mean, a few of them obviously have reached out to us and say we're having issues in terms of payment on the resi side. So in most occasions, we agreed with them, so they pay part of the rent and the rest of the rent is deferred. So some tenants, unfortunately, mistaken that landlords get a permanent break on their payments, which is not the case. It's only
I didn't receive the memo about free service charge, free this. Free.
Yeah, exactly.
I just got payment holiday.
Payment holiday for them automatically. Yeah, so automatically meant that landlords are going to get holiday in terms of no payment whatsoever. So why are we paying?
Exactly.
So landlords are obviously not the best in terms of getting publicity. So there's always a lot of negativity around it. So we just had to educate them and say, look, it's just a deferment. We will be paying. Most lenders that have allowed this payment holiday are normal buy-to-lets, but some of our landlords and myself were on a commercial mortgage. So we're not really getting any deferment on commercial mortgages. So we will continue to make our commitments.
Commercial mortgages, the ones that you've got mortgaged as an entire block, for example?
Correct, yes. With one large institution.
Yeah, sure.
As your high street lenders.
Yeah.
So we're not getting any deferment from them. So hence this puts us in a very difficult position. So just like I said, we have to clearly explain to them that there's still help available from the government to them. And they should meet at least majority of the rental obligation. So majority have seen sense to this. I've actually, funny enough, had an email last night from someone saying, "Oh, I'm leaving the property, moving in with friends until this is all sorted out." I'm like, okay, so, how did this come about? So it's now I'm going to have to reach back to that tenant and say, look, it doesn't quite work like this. I know we're in a very difficult position, uncharted territory for most people, well, majority of the people. So we still have to adhere to our commitments, and sort of we'll have to sort of reach out to them and to work on a common ground.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a funny one. I amalgamated a nice sort of template letter because I sort of.
Yeah, I did read it. It was very good.
Yeah, you saw.
It's very logical. Yes, exactly. It breaks it down. I mean, you're not going out much, so.
Well, yeah, exactly. They're not buying their Starbucks. They're not buying their lunch at bread. They're not traveling to work. That's your 20% already, for example. Like, because he stated, oh, we're being furloughed. We're only getting 80% of our pay. And I'm like, well, hang on. I'd love to get 80% of my pay and not have those costs. Just sit at home with your feet. Netflix all day. Okay, Netflix hasn't gone down in price, but hey, you're not buying lunch out, you travel, all that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, that all sort of factors in, right? So if you look to sort of view it sensibly and understand that most property is leveraged, there's very few people who are in a fortunate position that own sort of their investments outright. I mean, you wouldn't either anyway. You would try to raise money so you can build more, right? So everyone's in a position where they've got commitments. So I think we just have to help each other in order to get through this. That's sort of coming from the landlord's point of view as well as the tenants. Both have to sort of come to common ground.
Absolutely. And let's talk about the mix of property that you've got. Is it mostly 1 beds, 2 beds, 3 beds, or just a general mix?
It's a general mix. The residential part, I'm not sort of 1 beds and 2 beds and 3 beds and so forth. I mostly aim towards the sharer market. I've got a HMO as well, a couple of them actually. But my main concern is with the commercial tenants. I know with the residential tenants, there's help available, and you can sort of talk sense with them, and you can demonstrate that they can still afford to pay if they get all the government help. But with the commercial tenants, I've had a conversation this week, ongoing conversation, with a leading estate agent in London who is struggling. He's stopped paying. They stopped paying because they said, well, we obviously during current circumstances, sales have slumped, and we hence can't pay for this quarter. So I went back to them and said, look, the rent for this quarter was from earnings of the previous, so it shouldn't really be affected. Exactly. So they've seen sense to that. Now they've come around to say, well, maybe we can come to an arrangement where we pay you on a monthly basis for this quarter, and then we'll sort of have another conversation on the next quarter. So that's going to be an interesting conversation.
That's very interesting. So from an agency point of view, and you probably own the freehold of the shop that you're in, so it's not so much applicable to you.
Yeah.
Estate agents are always propped up by the sort of lettings income, right? So lettings income is your sort of bread and butter, and the sales income, that's bigger fish, isn't it? And one thing that I noticed from the rental demand is that everything has dropped off a cliff, right? Government guidance was like, no, hibernate, stay indoors, don't move unless it's absolutely necessary. And just goes to show really how moving is a bit of an aspirational thing. People always want, oh, we're having a baby, so we're going to move from a 1 bed to a 2 bed. Well, really, correct. You could put up with a 1 bed for a little while. And clearly that's what's happening, right? People are putting up with it, for want of a better word, because guess what? They've disallowed it. The government said stay at home, so you're not allowed to move. Quite interesting. I always find, and you'll probably agree with me, is that there's a surge in demand in January because relationships are made and broken over Christmas.
It's a stressful time where, can be a stressful time,
Exactly, right? So everyone always gets together or splits up over Christmas, and January we see that spike in registrations. Now, Are we going to see that after the lockdown period? There's rumors. I heard that the lockdown period was 3 weeks, and now someone's saying, oh, it's probably going to last until the end of April or maybe even longer, the whole lockdown thing. And
possible.
I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I think after the lockdown's been lifted, I think we're going to see a surge in demand for the smaller units, because I think we're going to have a lot of households sort of split up, so more households created. Now, one thing that I noticed is that the rent-to-rent portfolio that I manage, we had a few rooms already empty, which you always have a few empty. Those are impossible to fill because guess what?
Yeah.
So they're going to stay empty. But the curious thing was that I had a couple of overseas tenants, one from Australia, one from France, one from Spain, and they all sort of ran off just before this lockdown kicked off. They gave a month's notice or not, as the case may be, because they just thought, right, I'm leaving the country, see you later, keep my deposit, goodbye. And I actually think that a lot of those sort of lower skilled, lower income room tenants, we're talking 500, 600 a month sort of tenants.
Yeah. Most gig economy types, yeah.
They might not come back to London because they may have come to London in sort of, a little bit of a travel opportunity. Oh, I'll just get a little bit of a gig job, or work in a bar, or work as a barista.
Yeah, for more of a life experience.
Exactly. And my worry is that people like that aren't necessarily going to come back. So we're going to see a decrease in demand and therefore prices in the sort of lower end HMO room market. What do you think of it?
It's very interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. What you've said, obviously, it's quite scary in the sense that if there's no real demand at the bottom end, then the top and the middle will be affected. I think if Britain recovers faster than any other European country in terms of economy and getting things moving, then people will see, for example, from Spain or Italy, and think, you know what, we're still really struggling over here to sort of get the economy back on track. We'll go to London until this is sort of sorted out. London will always have a pulling power. It's always sort of managed itself pretty well in terms of providing life experiences as well as it's good, stable jobs. And a decent income, so where you can sort of come and.
We always tend to attract the Australian travellers here, don't we?
Yes, exactly. That's the reason we do it. There's plenty of culture.
Yeah.
And as soon as London gets back onto what it does best, I think it will still attract people. People will still come, whereas other countries will still struggle.
Absolutely. Now, tell me, we talked about the bottom end of the market. Now, I spoke to another fellow agent, and he was saying to me that 2-bed, 2-bath sort of new build apartments, they are going to be very hardly hit because a lot of serviced accommodation operators, they've sort of thrown the keys back on his desk saying, well, look, we're not getting into all the rest of it.
Yeah, correct.
To be fair, I had a few that were coming to the end of their term, which I could or could not renew. And as a result of the whole drop-off in the global travel market.
Demand, yeah.
Yeah, no one's coming, are they? So I'm just going to hand them back and tourism returns. But my point is this: there's going to be a massive oversupply of 2-bed, 2-bath new build apartments onto the lettings market, right? So you're going to get oversupply in that segment of the market, so prices are going to come down. So whereas you normally pay anywhere between some 1,700 and 2,200 a month for a nice 2-bath, maybe a river view thrown in or whatever, those prices have got to come down at least 10%. I mean, what's your take on
that? Yes, they will come down, but I'm not sure by how much, in the sense that I think what would badly be hit would be the sort of conversion properties, sort of the poorly kept properties. When landlords thought, well, I get enough interest, there's lots of demand, I don't really want to do anything to the property, I'm happy to leave as is. There's a few cracks here and there and it's sort of worn. I think those people would be hurt. What I've noticed is, even before all of this, if the property is up to standard and it's pretty well maintained, you will attract type of tenants you want to attract. The ones who are professional, working, who will pay a bit more to live in a nicer place. So the ones that haven't sort of kept up to trend or haven't sort of invested money into the property, they don't really see it as a business. They just think it's a bit of a cash cow where they just, rents itself and everything happens brilliantly, and they get money at the end of the month and that's it. Those kind of people will need to change their mentality, and they'll need to sort of step up their game. Otherwise, as you said, there'll be more new 2-beds available in the market, so they will instantly fill those as opposed to take the second hand.
Interesting. So you were thinking that Victorian, Edwardian, older units are going to come down in price more so than the new builds. Okay, interesting.
Yes, correct.
Well, I always found that they sort of held their value because of the uniqueness of them all. Like when you go into a development, you normally, if it's a development of 100 apartments, for example, there's always going to be 10 on the market at any given time. 5 or 10, whatever, but it's always more or less a race to the bottom, because with new builds, they're also difficult to distinguish from each other. The only difference is really which way is the lounge facing, internal courtyard, and what kind of furniture is there. So interesting take, interesting, very interesting. So the other thing that I was thinking about was, we talked about the lower skilled sort of traveling foreigners coming into London. Another friend of mine, he has a portfolio with properties in Clapham, Balham, Wandsworth. What he found was that your typical sort of first jobber, British, born and educated here person, so they'll come to London to work. They'll work at Pricewaterhouse or whatever firm in the city, and they've been sent home now. And they're working from home. They're not on they're still on full pay or whatever. But they're thinking, well, I can't go out drinking in Clapham. I can't go meet my friends in Balham. I can't go sunbathing on Wandsworth Common. Well, I might as well go back to my folks in Hertfordshire, because, hey, mummy does all my laundry and she makes meals and all the rest of it. Unfortunately for him, he just acquired this portfolio, and they were all in periodic tenancies. So he had like 5 or 6 that just gave him a month's notice and just left. And and my pickup from this is that a lot of companies that didn't have a sort of work from home policy before will do so after this whole shutdown is over, because they've realized that, okay, well, yeah, we lose a bit of productivity. Hey, but guess what? We're going to save so much money because we're not paying these extortionate rents for our properties in London. So that in turn will have an effect on commercial rents.
Correct.
Tell me more about your views on this.
It's really strange. I mean, I really thought about this about a couple of years ago, and I thought, as the internet progressed so much and people are changing the way they work and sort of live, and what they value, I thought there'll be a decrease in commercial uptake. But if you notice, for the last couple of years, there's been a huge surge in grade A offices in around central London. So that tells you people still do want to come in and connect with each other it's kind of like you said, creativity and sort of working together, and also just the social aspect of it. But I think there'll be a rise in flexible sort of office share. I think gone are the days where people want to take some 5 to 10 year leases on office space. I think that would go down in terms offered.
You're thinking that we might see a resurrection of the whole WeWork model?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously we're of a different generation. The new generation that's coming, the younger generation that's coming into the market, they have different sets of values. So they value experiences, their overall well-being a lot more than we did. And they want a working lifestyle that suits them. So they're not really interested in going in, rushing to the office at sort of 6, 7 in the morning and staying there for 8, 9 hours and coming home and then sort of repeating that from Monday to Friday. So that, I think, aspect is changing. In the next 10, 15 years, you'll see a massive shift. Those new people coming to the job market at that level are not interested in that lifestyle.
Interesting, because well, I feel like I'm a bit out of touch because I'm nearly 40 now, and life.
No,
I know. I'm 45. I know, but when I came out of university, it was very much a sort of I'm going to work in the city and 9 to 6 or whatever it was, and it's interesting how we've seen the sort of rising of the whole digital nomad thing, where people are working on a laptop in Bali or what have you. So you're actually predicting a slight in between, like a sort of digital nomad in London. So they go into work when they fancy and come out of the city when they fancy. More of a flexible lifestyle.
Yeah, it's more fluid. So, for instance, someone who fancies sort of living in Shoreditch for a couple of months, lives there, he or she, and then moves to Notting Hill for a while, or is sort of like the vibe around Notting Hill, then decides, well, fancy being by the seaside, moves on to Brighton. So that flexibility, I think they will value more as people settling down later in life or having children much later on. So that period from 24 to 32, I think they have bigger sort of disposable incomes. The aspirations at that period of time are quite different. So whoever understands that well and can give them a product which sort of meets their needs, they will sort of benefit hugely. So they could move and be more fluid as
not just from a residential point of view, but also commercial, like job wise.
Yeah, absolutely. Because most of the jobs, if they're surrounded by based on technology, as London is heading that way with fintech and so forth, with AI as well. So you will see a lot of it. I mean, for instance, in 2016, sort of people renting homes was 28% of the households. By 2025, this figure will change to 40%.
Wow!
So that's drastic change. So you already are seeing London is delivering 50% of the build to rent scheme, or a bit more actually, across the whole of the UK. So there's lots of institutional money going into schemes where are largely sort of 100 plus, which are built to rent, because it provides a steady stream of income for the pension funds or institution money. And it gives, and you could see sort of minimum of 3-year tenancies being applied. It gives surety to tenants as well as the owners, knowing that they've got an income stream of at least 3 years.
Interesting, but would they actually commit for 3 years though? If they're going to Notting Hill to check out the vibe there, and surely they'd only want to commit for like 6 or 12 months, right? And then move to Shoreditch, and then to
but that's more of like the I think the co-living types.
Yeah.
So they would be more fluid. They're happy with a smaller space. They're not obsessed with belonging, having items and sort of ownership of and sorts. They just want to have a more of a fluid life. I'm talking about sort of maybe sort of later, sort of 28s and 30s. They want to maybe have a minimum of 3-year tenancies until they save up for their own property and so forth. Which I think home ownership in London is going to become a privilege.
I think it is, yeah. And people ask me, like, why don't I own the property that I live in? And I think, well, it's all the same.
You're a classic example. Yeah.
Well, exactly, like leveraged lifestyle, right? But for me, it's more about, I don't want to tie up the stamp duty, the deposit money, and ultimately what I'm paying in rent is roughly what I'd be paying on a repayment mortgage anyway, or maybe not today with the rate so low. But the stamp duty alone, you need to hang on to the property like 5 or 10 years to even rinse that. It's a cost that doesn't come out in the wash very quickly. It's really, really high, the whole stamp duty. And I think for me, that's a big waste of money. And I think a lot of people will be thinking the same. If you're identifying and telling me now about this trend that you're seeing about people wanting to up and move and check different areas, I don't need to go to trendy places like Hoxton or Notting Hill or whatever. I'm quite happy here in South London, but I still want the flexibility to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're not tied down. I mean, once you've sort of taken a mortgage and so forth, it's a serious commitment. So you're having to service that debt on a monthly, yearly basis,
and you've got to hold the property for at least 10 years to get your money back. A property has to up in value so much before you even break even on the stamp duty.
Yeah, I mean, the build to rent stuff we talk. It's a very long game in the sense that you're not going to make money quickly. You're going to make money maybe the 10th or the 15th year of your owning it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, real money. You will have a return, but obviously, you've sort of secured an income for your next generation, or for your own pension and so forth for a long time.
Well, you've been doing it for a long time, and the fact that you've got a lot of things in-house means that you can make considerable cost savings. So I think you'll get a better return quicker than most. So for you, this works as a strategy. It's good to see that someone's actually making build to rent work on a semi-smaller scale, because we've heard about the big sort of co-living units and what have you. But to make it work on an apartment block,
it can still work on a smaller scale. I mean, the properties I would look at, if I was going to retain build to retain them, I would be looking at properties where I can sites where I can actually add value further down the line. So initially, as long as it stacks up on numbers, I'm happy to go along with it. But I need to know that I can actually enhance the planning, get a planning uplift down the line, maybe sort of once it's construction, maybe add a couple more units on. That would give me leverage. I don't want to borrow more than 65% loan to value. So I want to remain in those brackets. Also, I would be looking to value engineer and sort of really look at how this could be built in a quicker time frame. So instead of going for a concrete frame, I'll be looking to go probably for a steel frame. It'll be faster. We'll probably go for sort of like concrete rib deck sort of arrangement for the floors in between. So I'll be, and also I mean, most architects like to design buildings where they look really aesthetically pleasing, which is fine, which is good. But if it's a build to rent model, you need to know the materials you're using are widely available and they're at a reasonable price. So I would use bricks, but I would use them in a particular way where they're more attractive. So not your standard type of brick. There's so many variants in bricks at the moment, so you can really sort of uplift the look and feel of the property by just making slight adjustments.
Simple modifications. And how do you differentiate from other developers? Do you use interior design tricks and things like that as well?
I mean, to be honest, with having the agencies helped a lot, because you see a lot of property, right? So you get a general idea what's going to work and what's not. I mean, I don't need to spend huge amounts of money to make it look good. And that's the trick. As soon as you know how to do that, you can make lots of money. And you know what your clients want. And you understand that well. I mean, in one of the schemes I've done now, I've put a leased line in a leased internet line. So that costs you about sort of £300 a month. It's got the speeds on that are amazing. Never goes down. Sorry.
Over how many units is this?
This is over 12 units.
12 units. So okay, £300 divided by 12. That's a reasonable.
Yeah. I mean, similarly, I'm involved with another scheme. A friend of mine's doing in Tooting, which is GDV is 46 million. So they've got a commercial below, a hotel on one side, and 40 units above.
Oh, wow.
For that scheme, again, we're putting in lease lines. We were looking to put in a ground heat source arrangement, so the whole building would be run through heating the hot water from the ground. but because of proximity to the underground, we weren't able to go and sort of do that further. But I mean, these are the kind of things that you will be doing in a build to rent sort of model. So initial cost might be high, but if you're going to retain it for a long period of time, if you're producing your own energy and you can then charge the tenants at a reasonable cost, brilliant.
Oh, that's really
and also there's another article I was reading. It was very interesting. They were talking about as big institution funds and money moves into this build to rent sector, they want to know, and when they're lending to you, also they want to know the buildings that you're producing, what they're going to be doing in the next 30, 40 years time. Are they adaptable? Are they going to meet the standards at that time? Are they designed in a way where they can be upgraded? Are build quality sufficient for that? So that's from the lending aspect, but also from the users as well. You will need to upgrade facilities as you go down the line, so you need to allow for that. So you can't just think short term and think, you know what, this works for now, I'm just going to do it and we'll see what happens in the next 4 or 5 years. No, you're going to have to see it away. If you intend to hold it for a period of, say, 25, 30 years at least, you will be designing in a way which sort of you can change as the time goes. People's
it's more of a
needs and demands will change.
You're investing now to save money in the future.
Yeah, it's your product will always be better than others, right? So you want to, so the type of tenant we want to attract, we want to tell them, look, we can provide you with these facilities. So our M&E design will be crucial. Putting in facilities that save energy, for instance. As a younger generation comes of age and they start renting, I mean, in the environment's a huge concern for them.
Definitely.
It is for us as well, but I mean, maybe not in the same way as it is for them. They've actually sort of grown up through the whole period of how important the environment is. So they will want buildings that are efficient.
It's interesting, isn't it? That whole migration of expectations and demands of the younger generation. And I was talking to someone else the other day, and they said, "Oh, I've done so many things in my lifetime that my kids won't have to do." And he named a couple of things like, have a wired telephone and change the spark plugs on a car. I said, "Oh, you can still change the spark plugs on a car if you really wanted to." Is that, well, electric cars don't have spark plugs? I'm like, yeah, good point. What about motorbikes? That hasn't translated to motorbikes as yet, this whole electric movement. But anyhow, it's interesting to see the shift in tenant demand. So we talked about not just where they want to work, how they want to work, and how they want to live. It's very important. So from build to renter, it's very interesting to see your take on things and how you're investing for the future. So you've actually got to be kind of ahead of the curve, because you're not in it for the short haul. You're not just look pretty, sprinkling a bit of glitter.
Yeah, and we're going to sell it on and that's it. We're not, so it's not our concern afterwards as such. But obviously, if you're holding for long term,
you're going to have to spend money again later. It's like putting in a cheap kitchen that doesn't last. You have to change it in 5 years' time instead of in 15 years' time. These sorts of things.
I mean, for instance, now, I put in granite worktops. It's the initial cost on the outset, but the wear and tear that happens on those worktops. So, once you see these inventory reports all the time, and you see, the worktops, they're not designed to sort of last that long. The traditional workshops
ones just don't last, do they? I mean, they look pretty and all that, but
that's just initial. And obviously, the nature of sharing and sort of people renting, they're a bit sort of loose with the items and the way they use them. So you have to be careful. It has to be designed for longevity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, it's been fascinating having you on. It's been great talking about tenant demand, both residential and commercial. I'm actually quite excited to talk to people and different takes, because you're in commercial, you're in residential, you've got your finger on the pulse because you've got the agency, and also you're in the construction game as well. Just quickly, coming back to tenant demand, how have you seen it? I mean, for me, it completely dropped off a cliff. Like,
Touch drop.
Aren't letting it all. How are you finding things with the agency? Are you trying to work from home, or is it just literally shut shop?
I mean, we're working from home, but obviously in terms of viewings and stuff, there is no great demand as such at all. It's sort of your normal sort of maintenance issues and sort of, normal tenancy issues. But for now, I think there is going to be no movement. It's very difficult. I mean, we had a few tenancies that were meant to go ahead during this period, but we had to delay them as the tenants don't feel comfortable moving in, and we can't force them.
Sure, yeah. And how
had to change dates.
Sorry, say again.
And we've changed dates, so the contract dates start at a later point now.
These are properties that you own as opposed to managed for other people?
No, a mix. So there's a few that own for others, and there's a few.
I presume the landlords have been very receptive and understanding.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a few tenants landlords who are based overseas. I've got one particular that's come to my mind. She's based in America. I mean, we've explained the situation to her and said, look, this is the case. They're not going to find anyone else in this period of time. So the tenants passed their reference saying, we've met them, they seem like very nice people. So it's a case of, do you really want to lose them and have no one at the end of it, or just be more flexible and say, look, unfortunately, the way no one predicted this, the way things have panned out, we're just going to have to write this out.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, I think that's what we can do. We just write it out. Property goes on, albeit viewings and valuations and things like that are just non-existent. I mean, people have mentioned to me like, virtual tours and things like that, but even if they wanted to move in, you can't really do it. So unless you're...
No, you can't do it, because the people wanting to move in also want to get a feel for the place. It's very difficult to sort of get that experience on a virtual tour.
Precisely, yeah.
That is the problem. I was also meant to open a gym as well, so that's taken a massive backseat at the moment.
Yeah, it's funny that I had an opportunity to come up for a commercial premises with a gym, and I said to my business partner, maybe it's not the best time to do that. People can't go to the gym because the gym will be shut. So the revenue will be zero.
Yeah. But I think as soon as this period's over, there'll be a massive surge in leisure activities surrounding fitness. Even Savills reports have predicted this is one of the most growing industries for the next 4 or 5 years to come.
It's like January joiners all over again.
Yeah, exactly. Literally that.
Well, it gets busy in the gym. Hey, well, listen, it's been great having you on.
Thank you so much.
To get in touch with you. So just to recap, you're in Tooting. Your agency's in Tooting. You build in South London. Awesome to have you on. How do people get in touch with you if they want to reach out?
I mean, they can contact me through my agency, which is Concept Estate Agents. So they can Google that. The contact details are on there. My mobile number is 07966 162288 if anyone's got any queries or interesting points of view.
Awesome. Well, I'll put that in the show notes as well. So if anyone has any questions, just look down below for the show notes. And I look forward to seeing you again when this whole lockdown thing is over. And
yes, definitely. It will be over.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Right.
Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe on Stitcher, SoundCloud or iTunes. And please do give a 5-star review to help me reach others also. Are you looking to invest in London? Why not reach out to me to see how I can help you? See further information at www.jeroenhoppe.com.